All right, so if you're anything like me, you love a good true crime podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
So get ready, because today we're going to deep dive into something really fascinating, uh, cutting-edge DNA technology, and how it's being used to crack open cold cases that have been mysteries for years.
It's pretty incredible, you know?
Yeah,
These cases, they seemed like they would just never be solved.
right, like totally hopeless.
But now, with DNA analysis, justice is finally being served. Even after, decades sometimes.
I mean, we're talking cases you've probably heard of, like the Golden State Killer.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And maybe some you haven't, like the Angie Dodge murder or the Boy in the Box case from 1957.
Right. It's amazing how these advances are changing everything.
It really is.
Like, you think about how crime solving used to be,
Yeah,
fingerprints, eyewitness testimony.
right. Good old-fashioned detective work.
Yeah, and those were useful, of course.
Of course.
But let's be honest, not always the most reliable.
Yeah, fingerprints get smudged, memories fade.
Exactly, and that's where DNA comes in.
It's like the ultimate clue.
It is. It's unique to every single person, like a biological fingerprint.
So it's basically foolproof.
Well, almost. The science behind analyzing DNA, it's gotten so advanced.
So it's not just basic matching anymore.
Oh no, we're way beyond that now.
So like what? What's changed?
Well, one of the biggest game changers is this thing called touch DNA.
Touch DNA. I haven't heard of that.
So basically, scientists can now get DNA from tiny skin cells left on objects.
You're kidding.
Nope. Even the lightest touch can leave behind enough to potentially identify someone.
So like just touching a doorknob or something.
Exactly. Or a glass, a steering wheel, anything.
That's wild. But what if there's no touch DNA?
Well, then there's always, good old-fashioned fingerprints. Or if those don't work,
Yeah.
there's these genealogical DNA databases.
Oh yeah, I've heard of those.
It's like playing connect the dots, but with, DNA.
That's a good way to put it.
So you upload crime scene DNA to a site like Ancestry.com or GEDmatch, and you look for a match.
And you might find like a distant relative or something.
Yeah, a cousin, maybe a second cousin, something like that.
And from there.
From there, you use good old-fashioned genealogy research,
Okay.
build family trees, trace the connections back to a suspect.
So what are the chances of actually finding a relative that's, closely related enough to be helpful? It just seems like a long shot.
It might seem that way, but
Yeah.
you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because remember, these at-home DNA testing kits have gotten so popular.
Oh, yeah.
Millions of people have uploaded their DNA profiles.
Right.
So it's created this massive network of genetic connections.
So you're saying the chances of finding a relevant match are actually pretty high?
Way higher than you'd think, yeah.
So wait, all those people trying to find out their family history
Uh-huh.
are accidentally helping solve crimes?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow, that's wild.
It is. It's a good example of how technology can have unintended consequences.
For sure, for sure.
Sometimes good, sometimes, not so much.
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
Oh, definitely.
Okay, so we've got Touch DNA genealogical databases. That's two pretty powerful tools.
Oh, yeah. Powerful stuff.
Are there any other techniques that are kind of changing the game?
Well, there's this one that's still kind of new, but it's called phenotyping.
Phenotyping. Okay, what's that?
So it basically uses DNA to predict a suspect's physical appearance.
Whoa, wait, hold on. So you're telling me they can create a sketch of a suspect just from their DNA?
It's not quite a perfect portrait,
Yeah.
but it can give investigators clues.
Okay, so like what kind of clues?
Ancestry, eye color, hair color, even in facial features.
That's still pretty amazing.
It is. It helps narrow down potential suspects
Yeah.
or rule others out.
So it's not perfect, but it's a good starting point.
Exactly.
That's really
It
interesting.
is. It's really cool.
Speaking of interesting, let's talk about some actual cases.
Yeah, let's get into it.
And how these technologies are being used.
Okay, which one do you want to start with?
Well, how about the one that everyone's heard of, the Golden State Killer?
Oh, yeah, that was a huge case.
It was terrifying.
Absolutely.
This guy, Joseph James DeAngelo, terrorized California for years, like decades.
Yeah, the 70s and 80s.
Murders, rapes, burglaries, a whole nine yards.
It seemed like he'd just vanished into thin air.
Yeah, a total ghost.
Until, that is, they used genealogical DNA analysis.
Ah, so they finally caught up with him.
They did. Uploaded DNA evidence from a crime scene to a public database.
Okay.
Found a match with a distant relative.
Wow, so they built a whole family tree just from that one DNA sample.
Yeah, going back generations.
And it led them right to him.
Right to Joseph James DeAngelo.
Wow, that's incredible.
It really is. That case really changed things.
How so?
It showed the world just how powerful this technology could be.
Right, even for the most difficult cases.
Especially for those...
Must have been amazing for investigators to finally close that case after all those years.
Oh, yeah. It was a big win.
And for the families, too.
Of course, it brought them some peace.
But were there any concerns about using this tech to find him? Like, what if they got the wrong person?
Well, there's always a possibility of error with DNA evidence.
Right.
That's why it's so important to have very strict procedures.
Okay, that makes sense.
You got to make sure everything's accurate,
Right, right, yeah,
and avoid any false positives.
definitely.
It's like any tool, right? It can be used for good or bad.
That's a good point. Okay, so that's the Golden State Killer solved with genealogical DNA analysis.
Right.
What about touch DNA? Any good examples of that?
Oh, yeah, there's the Angie Dodge case.
Okay, remind me about that one.
So Angie Dodge was 18 when she was murdered in her apartment back in 1996.
1996.
And a man named Christopher Tapp, he was convicted,
Yeah.
but he actually spent 20 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit.
Oh, wow, that's awful.
It is a false confession.
So how did touch DNA help?
Well, in 2019,
Okay,
investigators decided to re-examine the evidence
got it.
using touch DNA,
Makes sense.
and they found a cigarette butt,
A cigarette butt.
yeah, near Angie's body.
Okay.
And guess what?
They got DNA from it.
Bingo! Matched it to a guy named Brian Drips.
And he was the real killer.
Turns out, yep, he lived near Angie at the time.
So a little piece of trash basically solved the case.
Amazing, right?
Yeah, it is. And they were able to free an innocent man.
Exactly. It just shows you we should never give up on cold cases.
It's true, technology keeps advancing.
It does, and we get new tools.
And that gives hope to families who are still waiting for answers.
That's right, it's never too late.
Speaking of waiting for answers, what about that boy in the box case? That one always kind of haunted me.
Oh, yeah, that's a sad one.
A young boy found dead in a box back in 1957.
Brutally beaten.
Awful.
Nobody knew who he was for 60 years.
I know, it's so heartbreaking.
He became this symbol of lost innocent.
Yeah, and unanswered questions.
Exactly.
But you said they finally identified him?
They did in 2022.
Wow, so how did they do it?
Advanced DNA testing.
Of course.
They got his DNA, compared it to a genealogical database.
And found a match.
Found a maternal relative, yeah.
So they were able to track down his family after all this time.
It's amazing, right?
It really is. Do they know who killed him?
Sadly, no.
Oh.
But at least he has his name back, Joseph Augustus Sorelli.
It's something, at least.
It is. It's not just the boy in the box anymore.
Right, he's not forgotten.
And his family has some closure.
It's a form of justice, I guess.
It is. It is.
That's a good point. Okay, so we've got these amazing cases,
Uh-huh.
and they all show how powerful DNA tech can be.
Absolutely.
But I think it's time to, really break down how this stuff works.
Yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Like genetic genealogy, how does that actually work step by step?
Okay, so let's say investigators have DNA from a crime scene, but no match in their database.
So they've hit a dead end,
Right, so they upload that DNA to a public genealogical database.
like GeneMatch or one of those.
Exactly, and these databases are full of people who've submitted their DNA for ancestry research.
So they're looking for distant relatives of the suspect.
That's right, even if it's like a fifth cousin twice removed or something.
Wow. Okay, so they find a match. Then what?
Then they use traditional genealogy,
Okay.
public records, family trees, all that stuff.
So it's like putting together a giant puzzle.
It is a puzzle where the pieces are scattered across generations.
That's a good way to put it.
And it can be a real race against time the further back you go.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But when it works, it's amazing.
All right, so genetic genealogy, check. What about touch DNA? How do they get DNA from just a few skin cells?
That's the magic of DNA amplification.
DNA amplification, okay, what is that?
Basically, they make millions of copies of the DNA.
Even from just a tiny sample.
Exact.
So they can create a full DNA profile even if they only have a few cells to start with.
It's pretty incredible, right?
It really is. But let's talk about the human side of this for a minute.
Okay.
What's it like for the families who have been waiting for answers, sometimes for decades?
It's an emotional roller coaster, that's for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, imagine living with that kind of uncertainty.
That's not Nanang?
Right, it can eat away at you.
So when they finally get those answers, it must be,
Overwhelming.
yeah,
A mix of relief, grief, maybe even anger.
definitely.
But there's almost always a sense of gratitude.
For the technology that made it possible.
Exactly, that finally gave them the truth.
This powerful stuff, it really shows how time doesn't diminish the pain of loss or the desire for justice.
It doesn't, not at all.
Well, this has been fascinating, but I think we need to take a break.
Okay, sounds good.
When we come back, let's dive into some of the ethical considerations surrounding this technology.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
Because like we said before, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yep.
Welcome back. We were just talking about how DNA technology is helping solve those cold cases.
Yeah, bring the answers to families.
It's amazing, but like we said, it's powerful stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Powerful technology.
Uh-huh.
Means we got to think about the ethics.
You got it. Like
Okay.
any tool, it can be used for good or for bad.
So where do we even start with the ethical questions around DNA tech?
Well, privacy is a big one.
That makes sense.
The more we use DNA, the bigger this database of genetic information gets.
Right, and that data is pretty personal.
It is. It's like the blueprint of who you are.
So is it safe? Like, Who has access to it?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like, think about those at-home DNA testing kits.
the ones everyone's using.
Yeah, a lot of times those companies can share that data.
With who?
Researchers, maybe even law enforcement.
Wait, so my DNA from, like, an ancestry test could end up being used by the police?
It's possible, yeah. It's all in the fine print.
Man, I never really thought about that.
A lot of people don't. It's important to know what you're signing up for.
Right, right.
But it goes beyond that too, you know.
Oh, so.
Imagine DNA databases get even bigger, maybe mandatory.
Okay.
Could governments use that information to discriminate?
That's a scary thought.
It is. It's something we have to think about.
Yeah, technology can be a double-edged sword.
It definitely can. We got to find that balance between using it for good and protecting people's rights.
And that balance is probably always shifting, right?
Oh, yeah, especially with technology moving so fast.
Okay, so privacy's a big one. What other ethical concerns are out there?
Well, there's always the potential for error.
DNA evidence can be wrong.
It's not foolproof, no. There's always room for human error.
At any stage.
Collection, analysis, even just interpreting the results.
So even with DNA, we can't just assume it's always right.
Right, we still need those checks and balances, make sure everything is accurate.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's not a magic bullet.
So we've talked about solving past crimes, but what about preventing future ones? Could DNA tech help with that?
That's an interesting question.
Yeah, like could we identify people who are predisposed to criminal behavior?
We might be able to.
Really?
It's still early, but the science is getting there.
So like intervene early, get them help.
Maybe, but it gets ethically complicated.
How so?
Well, are we labeling someone a criminal before they've even done anything?
Based on their genes?
Yeah, that's a slippery slope.
It is. It's like predicting the future.
Right, and we got to be really careful with that.
But there are other ways it could help with public safety, right?
Oh, definitely. Like, what if we had rapid DNA testing everywhere?
We talked about those portable analyzers, right?
Those are a good example. What if police could test DNA right at a crime scene?
Give results right away.
Exactly. No more waiting weeks.
Wow, that would speed things up.
Big time. And it would be more accurate, too.
How so?
Well, less chance of contamination. You know, the evidence is fresh.
Oh, right, right.
So it's faster and more reliable.
That's incredible.
It is. It's a big step forward.
It sounds like DNA tech is going to keep changing how we solve crimes.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And prevent them, maybe?
Potentially, yeah. It's a powerful tool, and we need to use it wisely.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. What about pop culture? It seems like DNA and forensics are everywhere these days, like in TV shows and movies.
Oh, for sure. CSI, Law and Order, all those shows.
They kind of glamorize it, don't they?
A little bit, yeah, but they also got people interested.
In the science behind it all.
Right, made people more aware.
Of how important it is.
Absolutely, it's not just entertainment anymore.
And then there are those true crime documentaries.
Oh, yeah, those are huge.
Podcasts, too.
Everyone loves a good mystery.
It's like we're all armchair detectives now.
It is, and I think that's a good thing.
How so?
Well, it makes people think critically.
Question what they see and hear.
Exactly, and it shows how complex the legal system can be.
It's not always black and white.
Nope, it's messy, just like real life.
Okay, so we've talked about genetic genealogy, touch DNA, phenotyping.
Those are the big ones.
Are there any other cool DNA techniques on the horizon? Anything you're excited about?
Well, the use of AI is getting really interesting.
AI, like artificial intelligence.
That's right.
How is that being used with DNA?
Well, they're using it to analyze DNA mixtures.
What's a DNA mixture?
So imagine a crime scene, multiple people's DNA.
Okay, like a fight or something.
Exactly. In the past, that was really hard to untangle.
I bet.
But now AI can help separate those individual DNA profiles.
Wow, so cases that were unsolvable before
Uh-huh.
could be solved now.
It's pretty amazing, right?
It is, and we also talked about those portable DNA testing devices.
Right, like a handheld lab?
So you could collect and analyze DNA right there at the scene.
Exactly.
No more waiting for the lab.
It's faster, more accurate.
It's like the future of crime fighting.
It is. We're on the cutting edge here.
And we have to be careful with that power.
Absolutely. It's exciting, but we got to be responsible.
Okay, we've covered a lot today. The science, the ethics, the real-world impact.
It's been a good discussion.
It has. Before we wrap up, any thoughts on what's next? What's the future of DNA technology?
Well, we've talked about a few things.
Yeah, like those portable analyzers.
Those are going to be big.
And AI analysis of DNA mixtures.
That's going to change the game.
For sure. Anything else? Anything that really blows your mind?
Oh, there's a few things, yeah.
Like, give us the inside scoop. What's getting you excited?
Well, we talked about those portable analyzers, right?
Yeah, like a DNA lab in your pocket.
Exactly. I think those are going to be huge.
So, like, picture this, a crime scene. The cops show up.
Uh-huh.
They swab a doorknob, pop it in the analyzer. Bam, they got a suspect.
Right there on the spot.
No more waiting for the lab results.
Nope, it's instant.
It's like something out of a movie.
It is. It's pretty futuristic.
But it's becoming reality.
It is. The tech's getting there.
That's pretty cool.
It is. And think about AI.
We talked about that too for those DNA mixtures.
Right, where you've got multiple people's DNA all mixed up.
Right, like a real mess.
Yeah, but AI can sort through all that.
And find the individual profiles?
It's like magic, but it's science.
That's going to solve a lot of cold cases.
Oh, for sure. Cases that were impossible before.
It's mind-blowing, really.
It is. It really is.
Okay, so we got portable analyzers, AI analysis.
Uh-huh.
Anything else?
This one's still pretty out there.
Okay, hit me.
But they're working on using DNA to predict not just appearance,
Yeah, we talked about phenotyping.
but like behavior, personality traits.
Wait, hold on. You're saying they could use my DNA to tell me I'm going to be like a risk taker?
It's not that simple.
Yeah, but you get the idea.
The science is moving in that direction.
That's pretty wild.
It is. It raises a lot of questions.
Ethical questions, right?
Yeah, like what do we do with that information?
Right. If someone's DNA says they're predisposed to aggression, do we treat them differently?
It's a tough one, for sure.
It is. It feels like we're getting into some sci-fi territory here.
A little bit, yeah, but it's important to think about these things now.
Before the technology gets ahead of us.
Exactly. We got to be prepared.
Okay, so predicting behavior, that's one to watch.
Definitely one to keep an eye on.
It's amazing to think how far we've come with DNA technology.
It is. It's changed everything.
And it's going to keep changing.
Oh, yeah, we're just scratching the surface.
It's exciting and a little bit scary all at the same time.
I agree. It's a powerful tool.
We've got to use it wisely.
That's the key, using it for good.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into the world of cold cases and DNA technology.
I've enjoyed it.
Me too. Thanks for joining us. It's been a fascinating conversation.
You're welcome. It's been fun.
And for our listeners, I'll leave you with this thought.
Okay.
We've seen how DNA can solve crimes, but what about preventing them?
Good question.
It's something to think about as this technology keeps evolving.
It is. It's the future.
That's right, and we all have a role to play in shaping that future.
Absolutely.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious.